Hello, viewers. I'm SB.
And I'm Amabel. That music really hits.
The music in this game is so good. Welcome to Amabel Goes to 4X School, Chapter 3, the third part of it now, where we're taking on Endless Space 2. This is a significant departure from the first two bits in that this is your first Space 4X, right? This is the first time you've ever seen one of these, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
Okay. So, when you say 4X games, a lot of people are going to think about Civilization, right? That's the first thing that pops to people's minds. But actually, this is the stuff the genre is rooted in. The first computer games that were really like reaching in a sort of 4X-y direction, and I might say they're sort of like proto 4Xs. They're not like the real deal yet. Honestly, Civilization might be the first real one. We'll talk about that later. But the things that sort of laid the groundwork for the genre were a spate of space exploration games that came out through the early to mid 80s. A lot of them building on the board game Stellar Conquest. I don't know if you're familiar with that.
I'm not familiar with Stellar Conquest, no.
Yeah, so that's a lot of the ideas of the 4X were advanced via this space model, and then the terrestrial stuff came later. So let's jump in here. We're going to talk about a lot of things this episode, I'm sure, but let's get the actual game started before we do that. So we're going to turn the game difficulty all the way up, and let's pick a faction. So,
Listen to the whispers of the heart.
It is an endless game, and as such, the factions are very different from one another.
Yeah.
We are going to have to pick here. I'm just going to go over some of these real quick with you.
Okay.
There will be gameplay in this video, I swear.
All right.
So much like Endless Legend, we have a bunch of factions that have, a bunch of affinities and traits, and then they have a relatively small number of unit types that we will be crafting sort of more specific unit builds out of by, altering the equipment that's attached to them. This kind of thing is very, very common in the Space 4X games, where you have like a couple of hull types, and then you learn lots of like different weapons technologies, and you customize like the turrets and hard points on your ships. It's a little more unusual in the terrestrial Endless Legend kind of space, but it is absolutely the default in these space ones. So, the Unfallen are a society of spacefaring trees. They extend out into space by literally growing vines outward from planet to planet, and so their sort of like network of planets becomes one large sort of wreath in space.
That is amazing.
Which is pretty rad.
Step into our world.
The Riftborn are robots, hailing from an alternate dimension orthogonal to the Endless Universe. The Riftborn come from a very like abstract place, obviously, as they are entirely mechanical, abstract life forms. They don't eat, don't use the food resource at all. But for reasons having to do with the population systems, as you'll see in this game, food is still important in the Riftborn Empire in various ways. Yeah, these guys have, for my money, the best music in the game, and also a lot of ships that look really cool. I like the design of their vessels a lot. This man Horatio is a faction. This faction is all clones of this dude. A trillionaire who left Earth to discover his own star cluster and create the perfect society, one that's filled with just him. So it's all clones of Horatio. They are all Horatio, and you can, when you meet other species in the galaxy, you can splice their genes into Horatio to make your population points better.
Okay.
That's a cool idea. Maybe
Yeah.
it's a little weird for our first play. We might want to take something that's a little closer to the baseline. This is just Space Marines type stuff.
All right.
Pretty standard Space Marine vibes here. The Vodyani,
The cleansing light.
The Vigyani are... We're not going to play the Vigyani in our first game. Explaining what they are mechanically and sort of within the story of the game is too complicated. I'm just going to skate past them for right now, but they do look extremely rad. And they have very, very cool ships. They kind of all have very cool ships.
To dust.
The Lumeris are essentially... they're like an amphibious mafia. That's the vibe.
Okay.
They're very like organized crime coded.
Yeah, I've seen the vibe.
They might be a good pick for the first playthrough.
Choose science. Choose
The Sophons here are basically little science gremlins.
Okay.
You get a science bonus. They're all science bonuses and, irresponsible uses of science. The Vaulters are the Vaulters.
I remember the Vaulters.
Endless Space 2 basically posits that the Vaulters were successful in running the faction quest out and reactivated the spaceship and got off of Auriga.
So I was actually going to ask
Yeah.
if this game came out after Endless Legend.
Yes, so Endless Space 1 came out first, then Endless Legend, then Endless Space 2. And the original dungeon the original Dungeon of the Endless is pre-Endless Legend. I don't remember if it's before the first Endless Space or not.
Okay.
But it's definitely before Endless Legend. So the Vaulters are the Vaulters. They are also science-focused, but in a different way. And they have the portal. They have the portal technology that they had in Endless Legends. You can teleport ships from planet to planet very easily. And they even brought along another one of the minor factions from Endless Legend. They have some Sisters of Mercy with them when the game begins, which is kind of cool.
Okay.
For my nation,
The Hisho are
my honor.
sort of strongly samurai-coded bird people. They
All
they have this whole like honor KE kind of samurai code kind of vibe.
Okay.
We will not be playing as these ones either because they're real complicated, they're real weird more than anything.
Should have
The Umbral Choir is a single ancient immaterial creature that lives in electronic systems and doesn't have any physical body. It's a whole. We'll come back to this. This is a for later thing.
By the souls of the lost.
And the
galaxy
Nakalim,
will be ours again.
we'll come back to the Nakalim as well. There's some stuff
Okay.
going on here. The fiction is a little bit more complicated in Endless Space 2 than it was in Endless Legend. Do you have strong feelings about any of these?
Well, you.
Oh,
did
I
not
skipped the
click on
Cravers. What am I doing? I skipped the
or be
Cravers.
consumed. Join the hive.
Join the Hive. They're they're the most fighty like. They're kind of the space necrophages to some extent, although they're not connected to the necrophages. Very war focused, enslaving enemy populations, devouring everybody.
Okay, so
The
if you
notions
click
of
on
treaty,
Luminaris,
trade, and peace do not exist. Feeding the hive is their all-consuming purpose.
Take a
Yeah.
gamble on us.
So I really like. I want to comment on the look of this character. The hair is impeccable. The hair says Jersey to me in a way that's very funny.
Okay,
Like
all
a
right.
very particular kind of mob movie vibes.
Yeah, space Jersey.
So-
Yeah, there's definitely some of that.
That is where I'm leaning.
Okay,
right
you want
now,
to go Lumeris?
immediately.
Let's start Lumeris.
Yeah.
So, to get a sense of what we're doing here, the Lumeris are planet brokers. As masters of business, the Lumeris can purchase planets to create outposts without using colonization ships, which is pretty cool. The basic population unit of the Lumeris gives +1 dust with another +3 dust if the planet they're on is a fertile planet. That's the way you got to read that. And their default political opinion is they support the pacifist party. There are some systems here that you are going to have feelings about. I'm very curious to see what you think of them.
Okay.
So our starting situation is we have the homeworld of Genis, an atoll planet full of tropical islands and tropical storms. The families rule it from behind the scenes, this whole thing.
Yeah.
Our starting government type is Republic, and we start with the pacifist political party in charge. We will also start with some Nashast citizens, because your population points actually break down into different ethnic groups in this game. Again,
Okay.
you're gonna have some feelings. We're gonna get there. We're gonna talk about it. Our trade routes are not blockadable by opponents in Cold War. We're sneaky. If they're not willing to actually open fire, we can get through pretty much anything. And we have some bonus approval on systems and +1 maximum probe stock on our exploration ships. And you'll see what that all means. So without further ado, I think we'll just go ahead and launch it in this state. We have this is the right galaxy size for 6 people? Yeah. Okay. 5 opponents picked randomly from among the possibilities here, and let's go. So we're gonna get a little introductory cinematic, as we did in Endless Legend. They have stepped up their animation game a bit between the two things, which you probably saw a little bit of already.
Yeah.
Man, I love the aesthetics of this game so much.
Sure, the families have disagreements.
That's why we have codes.
To work together. You don't steal the fish from somebody else's plate.
The second he walked in, I knew the kid was different. He'd take risks. Break the rules that tied my hands. But he ignores the codes. Goes overboard.
And dust, powerful stuff.
No personal use.
So we collect it, invest it.
And he misuses dust.
Complaints get handled here.
Not in back alleys.
Applies, shall we say, unnecessary force. Maybe he knows dust, but I know the families. And I need both of those to take the galaxy.
So, speaking of the galaxy, welcome. Here we are. You are right about there. Yeah, so you can see this is a sort of a more personal level story. This particular faction plot, they're not all like that. Some of them are very much like, you know, the history of our race reaching into the stars type stuff. But this is like, you know, one woman, the head of one family, taking a hothead under her wing to... It's a very like classic kind of mob movie thing.
Yeah.
And their music is very like, yeah. I'm gonna stop gushing about the aesthetics, but all the visuals and all the music and all of that stuff in this game, I just think is so top notch.
It's really evocative.
Anyway, here we are, the system of Ash. So, you're probably noticing there's a lot of stuff here that's kind of shaped differently, but in a lot of ways it's actually remarkably similar. So, this is the system we control. We have currently colonized one planet within the system. This is an atoll-type planet. It is temperate and fertile. You can see the other planets in the system are a monsoon-type world, a savanna-type world, and an arid-type world. We can't live on these ones.
Okay.
Too close to the sun, too hot. We can colonize this one and spread out to it, and eventually we will unlock technologies that will help us survive on different kinds of planets. But every faction has, you know, different planets that they're naturally adapted to. Each system is sort of like a city in the sense that you have a system-wide build queue, you have a system-wide happiness level. You can see here the effects of being happy. It works a lot like Endless Legend in that, you know, more happiness provides bonuses to your resource outputs, but you will notice that they removed industry from that system. Happiness bonuses no longer affect industry either positively or negatively, because it turns out bonuses to industry are just always the most important thing, And so if you make a system that can give industry bonuses, that system becomes the most important thing. So the way we generate population points here, or the way we generate resources here, you can see we have 3 units of population, 2 Lumeris, with that, that basic functionality like we said earlier, and then 1 Nashast. These are swamp monster people, basically, very combat focused. They don't naturally produce any resources. And their political opinion, they support the militarist party. So that's going to be a whole situation we're going to have to deal with. The planet itself, as I mouse over it here, you can see has an output of 8 food, 6 industry, 4 dust, 2 science. That is the yield per population point working on the planet. So you can see at the top of the screen here, we have 24 food because we have 3 population points, each producing 8 food.
Got it.
And then they're also producing whatever it is that they, that is on the population itself. The different types of planets have different base yields based on, their type and some random factors and whether or not they have anomalies. There are anomalies in this game. You can see here Ash2 has a permanent monsoon, which gives extra food, but it's hard to live there. It's hard to build there. So minus approval and minus industry. If we hit space, we flip over to this other view that shows that information in a different way. This is a thing that runs throughout this entire game. There are 2 views for each zoom level. This is the economy level. This will be more meaningful when we have more planets. And then if we zoom out a bunch more, we can see the diplomacy and constellation view, which again, pretty low information at the moment. So, in addition to our starting planet, we have our starting ships. We have here 2 caravels, which are scout ships. And let me just pop us into the ship designer real quick to show you what that looks like. So a ship is composed of, sort of a base hull, which gives you some of your stats, and then each ship has module slots to add stuff to. This ship has, some basic guns on it. It has a probe module, which allows us to explore the galaxy in a variety of ways that we'll talk about in a moment. An engine that gives it its base movement points, or augments its base movement points. And then some basic armor. You can see up here at the top already, there are 3 different kinds of weapons, base, and then multiple different kinds of defenses and stuff. You get your missiles and your kinetic weapons and your lasers. There's a lot of stuff going on in the war systems, and we'll get there.
Okay.
But for the moment, this is our sort of basic ship design. We also started with a single hero. It's the guy from the cinematic, Yelchin Ordara Orakio. Heroes in this can be, just like Endless Legend, they can be assigned to govern a system, or they can be assigned to lead a fleet in combat. They have their own ship for this purpose. If we click on him, we can see his ship's design. He has more guns and more armor, and we are going to outfit him with some probes real quick before we assign him to an army. So that's going to cost us a little bit of dust to update his design, but yeah, I want a lot of probes. Because just like in Endless Legend, early exploration is a great way to earn a bunch of XP for your hero before you decide what you're going to do with them. And then we are going to attach him to one of these fleets. Okay. So if we zoom in a little bit here, we can see our colonized world, and then we can see these are unexplored curiosities on the planets, the other planets in the area. Once you've colonized the system, you can explore the curiosities using system resources. Like we could put those in the build queue.
Mm-hmm.
Put forth a little bit of effort to study some kind of life form readings on Esh2. But you can also reveal the curiosities in a system with a scouting type ship, any ship that has probes, by just going to this view and clicking on the little curiosities. So we send one of our probes in, and we have discovered that that life form was some dust-siduous trees. Mutated trees likely crafted by the Endless that filter dust. So that's pretty rad. Extra dust and approval on the planet. And we pulled some of it. This is a luxury resource. So we pulled some of them for our personal use. And we'll be able to harvest them if we settle there. We have 2 more probes, and there's 2 more things here, so let's just search both of these. There was an atmospheric anomaly that turned out to be lush and pleasant with a single year-round season of moderate temperatures. Life is good on this planet. Everyone benefits from its natural wealth. Residents, tourists, businessmen, and scientists. So yeah, just good yields. Real good yields on this world. That's actually extremely rad. We also discovered some battle data, and we've got ourselves a battle tactic. We'll talk about battle tactics when we start fighting people. The other thing we discovered, this planet also has the trees. Okay, really interesting. So, with that Garden of Eden yield figured out here, we can see this planet is a fantastic place to use as like a shipyard, or it behooves us to try to figure out how to live here quickly, because the planet has a lot of good industrial yields. It is unfortunately an arid planet, and we're kind of water creatures, so that's probably going to be a challenge, but we'll get there. We have some very basic buildings that you can construct at the beginning of the game. We're just going to start with drone networks. Why? Because industry. Because always industry and food, right, at the beginning of the game. Okay, you can see here how long it's going to take for us to build up enough food to produce more people, and an indicator of what the next population type will be. This is weighted, so in a situation where in a system where you have more of a particular population type, that's the most likely type to be the next population unit. But eventually, a Nashest will be will be born here as well. And it's these obviously represent who knows how many people.
Yeah.
We can also see that Esh4 over here, in addition to its temperate, whatever, and its basic yields, we can see it has both titanium and hyperium on it, which is, these are strategic resources I'm sure you recognize. They look an awful lot like the strategic resources from Endless Legend, don't they?
A little bit.
Okay, so the fleet that we had fire all those probes has spent all their movement. Firing probes costs movement. But we have this other ship that hasn't done anything yet, and we're just going to move it. So the map here it's sort of a node-based map. We can, at the beginning of the game, we can only travel along these space lanes, basically. So let's just have one of our scouting ships head down this way. Okay, and you can see the lane has like a certain length to it. We spent 7 points of movement along the distance there. Very close to it's very close to like war game style measuring inches type movement, which I'm sure you're familiar with.
Oh, you mean like nerd war games?
Yeah. Sorry. Miniatures war games, the kind that I like.
Yeah, because there are basically 3 different.
Yeah, there's
called war games.
Yeah, like 3 different large hobby spaces that all call themselves war games. Yeah, sorry, I should have clarified.
And then the miniatures one separates it into 2 other ones.
Mm-hmm.
One where you paint your dolls, and the other one where you pretend you're going to get to play with them.
Those, in my experience, those are the same. Anyway, so we have a couple of other things to do before the end of the turn. Amabel, what are we still missing?
We're not researching anything?
We're not researching anything. Let's check out the technology wheel. So this game has one big technology wheel. It has reintroduced the idea of prerequisites, but in a more sort of a limited fashion. And it does still have this basic idea of like, so we started here to use this as an example, the economy and trade area. We're in tier 1, researching one thing from tier 1 will unlock tier 2, researching 2 more things will unlock tier 3, and then there are places where there are prerequisites. The prerequisites aren't hard requirements. but you get a bonus to your research rate if you have the prereq. So like you can research the thing at the end of the line without the thing at the beginning of the line, if I remember correctly.
Now to clarify, the unlocking that's specific to this wedge of the wheel.
Yes, yeah.
Okay.
Each quarter of the wheel has its own sort of stuff. So you have your military at the top there, empire development, which is mostly like food and diplomatic type technologies, your science and exploration stuff, and your economy and trade area. I'm going to go ahead and just start us on xenolinguistics here. You can see one of the things you earn from the xenolinguistics technology is xeno-industrial infrastructure, which gives you 10 industry to the system for each planet that you have settled, and then an additional 10 for each one that is fertile, and an additional 10 for each one that is temperate. Our starting planet is both of those things, and we can expand to another temperate world right away, so it's just a huge amount of industry. It will almost double our industry by itself, that building. Plus, this is the technology that lets you exploit titanium, which we will need, so... We are not producing a ton of science right now. It's going to take us 8 turns to get that first tech, but we'll figure it out. We'll get there.
Okay.
All right, let's talk about the other thing that I'm sure you've been waiting for. The Senate, the government, the laws. So currently, our population census tells us that we are made up of 2 units of Lumeris and 1 unit of Nashest. That's pretty easy to know at this point, but once we're running a bunch of planets, this will actually be useful. We can see here we have the Senate breakdown. We have 3 total representatives, and they're proportionally set up here. The leading party in the Senate determines sort of like the law that's at the front of your set of active laws. This is pinned by the active party. So the base law of the pacifists is +1 dust on all your population points, and allows you to force peace with empires that you beat if you're at Cold War with them. You can pay extra influence for a term they can't argue with that just sets you to peace. And then we have an open law slot, and we know we have politics is a kind of technology, a kind of like social technology is the basic position of the game here. We know a couple of kinds of laws, and we will develop more kinds of laws as the game goes on. In particular, as individual political parties remain in the government, they basically like earn experience points and level up and get more intense versions of their ideology to put into action, which I think is an interesting idea.
Okay.
So you can see here, from the pacifist party, we have the potential law of the non-military intervention framework, which reduces the cost of diplomatic terms. And from the militarist party, we have the factory improvement and productivity enactment, which would reduce the cost of ships. It costs influence to change the laws in the government. Obviously, we don't have any because we just started the game. But you also have these like neutral, these partyless laws. And I think we are going to want to enact some of this stuff, maybe. So the Empire Entertainment and Education Initiative, sometimes colloquially known as Toys for Boys, will improve happiness tremendously. This will put us up to full happiness in our base system at the cost of some industry. But this will help us get those early technologies faster, because improving the happiness in our systems will give us a science bonus, right? So I'm going to go ahead and pass that law right now. You can see here in 19 turns, we're going to have an election. This is what replaces the sort of the Empire plan system from Endless Legend. We'll have elections every 20 turns, and the way that will go will be based somewhat on the basic political leanings of our ethnic groups here, but also to some extent on the events that have occurred and choices that we make, which will also create political sentiment of various types. There are other government types. Changing is a non-trivial task, obviously, and at the very least, it requires a whole bunch of influence that we don't have. We'll worry about this stuff later. Right now, we're a republic. We get 2 parties represented in our Senate, and we have more intense versions of the laws than the other parties do. It's just like the effects are just like plus, 25% on all of the laws. What do you think about this?
I really need to see it in action to have thoughts, but I do. So, coming at it from my background,
Mm-hmm.
I feel that having some simulation of politics, not just in terms of like legislative politics, but just factionalism, the way people relate to power and whatnot, where you do not necessarily have control over.
Yeah.
That's so important. That's so
the idea
crucial.
that there are lots of people in your civilization that are not you, the decision maker, and that they may have different ideas about what they want to happen, I think is a really important part of simulating any kind of making any kind of like idea of how societies work. And
because like even just looking at it militarily, because again that's where a lot of my background comes from. For like game design is historically there are a number of battles or attacks or campaigns that happen because someone back home, someone political, decided we need to make a move, we need to do a thing that might have been a really bad idea.
Yeah.
And actual commanders have to deal with that, right?
Mm-hmm.
And actual like political leaders or whatnot have to deal with the demands from the legislature. So having that kind of texture, that lack of complete control, which I know is a thing that people love in a lot of these games, it feels like. I think that's good. I think that's as it should be. Is the thing I'm saying.
Okay. So we have found ourselves a new system here. This is the Oshi system, and it's already inhabited. There are people on one of these planets. The Galvrans. So let's have a quick look. First of all, when we meet a new system, we can click on the star and get a little zoom in here on each of the planets. This is just a cool presentational thing. We probably won't actually be doing this for all the systems because it does happen kind of slowly. But I do think it's really rad looking.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's enough of that. We're gonna fast forward this. It does happen a little slowly. So what's up with y'all? Evolving on a planet with a highly eccentric orbit, this quirk of celestial mechanics has seen the Galvran endure long, long winters, where survival is predicated on living deep underground for years at a time. As well as contending with the cold, the ancestors of modern-day Galvran experience dim light levels, and it is thought that this is the reason they possess 2 pairs of eyes. With such a challenging environment, it is also no surprise that the race became masters of technology, constantly interrogating nature and creating tools for a means of survival. From hardship sprung solidarity, too. And to this day, a favorite model of the Galvran is still survive together, die alone. So, they are a more scientific-leaning ethnic group here. They are temperate. This refers to their demeanor, not like the climate on their planet. They provide more dust than other factions, not particularly interested in war, and each minor faction has a faction trait that you can assimilate into your empire if you bring them in. So plus 40 science per strategic deposit on each system would be an awfully big deal if we could get that hooked up. So we're just gonna improve our relations with this faction with a little bribe. And in fact, I'm gonna run out. You know what? No, 1 bribe should be sufficient. So you can see here, That bribe has created an effect that lasts 10 turns that will improve relations with them by 3 points every turn. As this meter fills up, we'll get more and more access to them. Not everybody has the bribe thing as a Lumeris action.
Okay.
And you can see that this creates pacifist political sentiment when we do it. A lot of the actions that you will perform during the game have some kind of sentiment attached to them, and will affect, there's sort of like an ambient level of political sentiment for each party, and when the election happens, wherever those are at that moment, it matters a lot. The other thing we're going to do for them, which they're going to appreciate, is we're going to use the 3 probes on this scout ship to help them understand their system here. So first things first, exploring gets us stuff in addition to the knowledge that there are strange fossils. We're learning, we're picking up flight recorders, learning new battle tactics. We're getting little bits of resources here and there. We found something that was worth 25 science in this mutated flora. An example of biodiversity gone berserk. This planet shows a variety of plant mutations of every size, shape, color, scent, flavor, and psychoactive effect that one can imagine. And there's so many little bits of art associated with all this stuff, and they all rule so much. Just like the feeling that this game evokes, I think, is completely unmatched in the genre. Oh, this unlocked the design for a system improvement. So this is a thing we can build now. As well as we discovered that there are meteor strikes on this planet. Not totally ideal, but, rare metals at least. There is free metal in those asteroids, or those meteors. Okay, so since we did that, curiosity revealed, you can see we have gained more approval over time there, so that we'll jump up with them pretty quickly. This caravel is out of movement, of course. The other one with the hero attached is moving along the other space lane, and so that's really all there is to this turn.
Okay.
Oh, I'm sorry. I forgot about hacking. This game has 100 systems. Okay, so now that we've seen another, living faction, let's talk about the hacking system. Because, the Space Age empires run on computers, it turns out. So, I'm a little...
Don't tell Herbert that.
I'm a little foggy on this. Yeah, we've not had our Butlerian jihad in this game for sure. So we run a hacking operation from one of our systems to somebody else's system. It'll take 4 turns for this to complete. Hacking minor factions will allow you to alter their relations, both with yourself and others. Seems like a fair thing to do. So we'll just start working on them. And then you can see here, we have bandwidth available within the thing, and we can add extra modifiers to our hacking operation. Basically, we could spend 15 bandwidth or allocate 15 bandwidth here to reduce the likelihood of getting counter hacked. I don't know. This is
like a spying system.
I do not remember the hacking system very well, but yeah, this is the espionage stuff works via the hacking system. Yeah, good eye, Amabel. All right, let us continue.
I have 2 of those.
What's that like? I didn't get any. My vision is so bad. All right, XP from continuing to explore has given Yelchin his first level. So in this game, the hero skill points unlock new ranks of skills in a way that's very similar to the function of the technology wheel. You can see here, once we are at 4 skill points used, we'll unlock the next tier, and then 8 to unlock the tier after that. So, if we wanted him to go back and be a governor, a couple of points of Blue Sky Speculator would get us an awful lot of science. Bonus movement speed on the fleet and bonus vision range if we want him to stay in the ship. Optimal operations expert will give the population in the system he's managing extra food and industry. Cosmic Castaway would give us more experience and more vision range. Vision range is a big one. So this is broken down kind of like the Endless Legend thing in that the top part of this tree is the same for all heroes. All heroes of our faction will have this same part here, and then his particular class is what determines these.
Mm-hmm.
So the Lumeris skills, of course, are extra dust. The hero cuts a deal with the Meos clan for additional political support in exchange for their assistance managing dust generation on a given system. And of course, an elite team of Maverick Omakar engineers can join up with the hero's fleet to maintain and improve hull and shield conditions. They're really sticking to like the vibe of the lore, and that is true for all of the different factions in a way that I really admire. I'm gonna grab Blue Sky Speculator. I think this guy's gonna become a governor, but we'll probably spend a couple more turns out, earning XP before we commit to that.
So let me ask you 2 questions.
Okay.
Because I know, obviously we went to Endless Space 2.
Yeah.
We're not doing Endless Space.
Right.
Do you have experience with Endless Space?
So this is hopefully not going to be terribly controversial. I just don't think there's any reason to look at Endless Space 1. I don't think that it's particularly interesting as a historical curiosity in the sense that all of the interesting stuff it does, Endless Space 2 is doing more of.
So my other question is, like, the skill tree thing that's here and was in Endless Legend, did that originate in Endless Legend? Did that come from...
Don't ask me a lot of specific questions about Endless Space 1.
Oh. Okay. All right.
The answer is it's not important.
Okay.
I have played through a couple of games. It's just, we don't want to play through every Civilization game either, right?
No, I get it.
And like I said, I don't think that Endless Space is necessarily that Endless Space 1 changed the genre in any way that makes it like a thing we have to look at or,
Yeah.
So we are continuing to move here. Let's execute some more movement. Okay, we found another system, Scorpius, which also has Transvine. This strange plant with innumerable tiny crescent-shaped leaves can be safely ingested. It creates a sensation of peace and happiness, and is used as a natural relaxant and sedative. It is also a useful tool to keep rowdy populations compliant. I appreciate
representation there.
I appreciate that this game does not shy away from sort of using the language of Empire for concerns of Empire. Okay, so you've seen that we can use probes to explore curiosities on planets. We actually can also just shoot them out in a direction and, probe. Let's just see what's out there. So we're going to keep this ship at Ashi for a minute here and just kind of fire probes out into the surrounding area and see what's what. These guys have not actually arrived. They need one more movement point to get to Scorpius. We're still building. We're still researching. And you can see here, the turns here are often even more incremental than in Endless Legend. We'll spend multiple turns just like moving between two systems and stuff like that.
Yeah, I have a couple of thoughts on that, but there's a story thing here, so I'll let you read
There is. So welcome to the beginning of our faction quest. This game, like Endless Legend, features a quest for each faction. The quest starts 5 turns into the game, so lets you get your footing and look around a little bit. I chewed Arden out after that fiasco. He managed to upset all 3 of the other families, not to mention a few of my Meos siblings. How much clearer can instructions be than do what you gotta do and don't get caught? The kid had promise, but more papilla than propriety. Brash is good, but brash and canny is better. As the current head of the families, I wanted to keep the others off balance, not start a war. It doesn't matter, he said. They don't understand dust any better than we do. They'll be back one by one to do business with us. New business. Galactic business. Measured in dust, not Sakan. Oh, what do you know? First was Oros Arakio herself, in a wheelchair but with eyes that glinted like harpoon tips. She pointed a limb toward the sky and said, "Up there. We're going to go there. Build there. No zoning laws, no building codes. Give me access." When she leaned forward, it was like she was ready to spear a fish. Let's get rich. The Meos, the Arachio. Together. She left, and Arden and I had barely started discussing the possibilities when Irio Ferbarda strode in, worth 3 trillion Sakan, but looking like his clothes cost 10. No detritus. Here's the deal. Developing space means stations, ports, docks, factories. Now we know there's cheap labor out there, and no workplace safety hassles and whiny environmental regulators. The Omakar can develop the galaxy. You bring us in, we cut you in. Everybody wins. And, late at night, sometime after their evening services to their whale gods, Jodan Kern Adalensalam arrived, ready to sell seawater to a squid. You know what you need, but I'll tell you anyway. Exploration, protection, freight, tourists. You need ships. Ships, you say? Who do I go to? Yeah, that's right. Lancelum. Us. Colonies and outposts means trade, travel, ships. Let's do this thing. He pointed out the window and then accidentally right-clicked. He pointed out the window. Boom! Arden and I were grinning at each other when he left, but for different reasons. So, who do we work with? I mulled. Doesn't matter, he said. This is just the start of the game. We can pick and choose. But you know what the end game is going to be. He leaned in. Expensive cologne. I wondered who else was paying him. Dust. It's all going to come down to dust. So, there are lots of points in your faction quest where you get to make a decision that will, you'll have different goals with different rewards and potentially different branches off of those decisions. I don't remember how much branching there is. But we can choose to focus on the Lancelum factory, discover at least 50% of the systems in this galaxy. Feels like a pretty large task, but I guess that's a lot of titanium. Working with the Omakar, if we are present on at least 4 planets, we can move forward and get some dust. Or focusing on the Arachio, who want to develop greenfield colonies far from the eyes of taxmen and regulators. They would like us to assimilate a minor civilization. And for doing so, we will receive some Jadonics. We'll talk about how luxury deposits work in this game. It's quite different from the way they worked in Endless Legend. But we'll worry about it later when we actually have some. So I think this is pretty doable. The Omakar thing is also pretty doable, right? We have 2 planets in just our home system that we can colonize pretty easily. I don't know. Do you have any strong feelings about this? The Omakar are like the construction guild, and the Arachio are the what you call it, fishing.
Yeah, I don't have a strong preference.
I'm asking mostly like mob movie wise more than mechanics wise.
Yeah, I mean, it feels like, hey, go big, or go home. But I don't know, like, is that going to be like the whole playthrough trying to get that goal?
50% of the systems in the galaxy is going to require a lot of technology. I think we should not do this one. Let's go. Okay. Let's go Omakar.
Okay.
We can make this happen. All right, the Omakar own construction on Genis and want to own it in space too. Cheap labor for their sites means cheap labor for Meos farms and refineries as well. Okay, so we'll get there. So you can see here, this system is projecting a zone of influence. Any system that has settlements on it will do that. So the fact that we're seeing one of these circles here means that there's another minor faction on the system right here. Because if it was a player, it would be colored.
Okay.
And this sort of just represents, like, the kind of like space traffic and satellites and stuff. You can know there's something over there because you see the kinds of things in space that would indicate that. So let's just head over. Okay, we discovered a whole civilization of Nashest down there. Well, it looks like they have a couple of anomalies that they would probably love somebody to take care of. But let's start with a bribe, as ever. So, what's the deal with the Nashest exactly? A relatively recent addition to the Isles of its home planet, the Nashest are the descendants of benthic horrors that crawled onto land a few 100,000 years earlier. With the exhausting fauna ill-prepared to survive this new onslaught from the depths, especially as sea levels rose, lessening the amount of habitable land, the Nashest quickly became the planet's primary predator. Now entering the space age, they are still as aggressive as when they made their first forays onto the tidal flats of their homeworld. Not the most welcoming of races, the Nashest nonetheless can make strong allies if well handled. So yeah, they're warmongers, obviously, and they make monstrous opponents. If we assimilate these guys, work them into our military and stuff, we can have bigger and meaner troops than anyone else in the galaxy. So we got that little bribe started, and we're also going to help them out with this stuff. Let's see, what have we discovered? There was a ruin here. We were able to dig out, plans for a module. This is a spaceship module.
Okay.
Repair bots. Gives a health bonus, ship repairs after each phase. Okay, that's pretty cool. We discovered that this planet suffers from polar tempests, just entirely detrimental, unfortunately. Exceedingly cold winters and large continental masses drive this planet through cycles of violent weather. This results in heavy wear and tear on infrastructure and makes farming and life in general pretty unpleasant. And more battle tactics. Okay, and another transvine deposit that had not yet been discovered. Okay, well, that's all interesting. So we're gaining reputation with them. Where is our hero at? So you can see the little circular line around level 2 is his XP meter. So we're like a little bit over halfway to the next level. We've spent all of our movement points, but I'm going to fire a probe down the space lane ahead of us here. Let's see. Okay. More systems with the more anomalies. I would love to get him one more level so that we can finish off that that bonus science skill and then warp him back to governor duty, All right.
Yeah.
And the probes are continuing to travel. We're just going to let that keep happening. Okay, our hack has reached the minor faction planet, so we can create a backdoor here, which will allow new hacking operations to run starting from this node. We can improve our image with them through a mix of careful adjustments to internal diplomatic communiques, combined with subtle propaganda programs. Faction releases can be improved, so we just get some extra standing. We can uncover blackmail materials, we can fuck with their economy. We pretty much just want them to be on side here, so let's just nudge their perception of us in the right direction.
Good old-fashioned propaganda.
Yeah, and then we're gonna do the same thing. We're gonna run a similar operation on the Kraz here. That'll take a little bit longer to travel because it doesn't have as clean of a path, but it'll get there. It'll get done. Okay, so this probe has discovered a whole lot of nothing out here. I'm just gonna, like I say, the probe modules on these ships will produce a probe every X turns. So if we just sit here, the ship will keep manufacturing new probes. I just want to sort of fire out an arc of them before we head back home.
Okay.
And you are going to head down to Decky because there is more stuff to explore down there. So we have a couple of large lava worlds. Discovered Humerus Incidentis. What is this? This planet was inhabited by a highly advanced race that died off when a massive volcanic eruption induced a prolonged winter. The knowledge of their civilization was meticulously documented and stored in bunkers scattered across the planet. Clearly, they expected to rise up after the winter and continue their evolution. Sadly, the bunkers sit unlocked and unused, and the people have returned to the dust. Their knowledge, however, is yours to explore, so that is a huge amount of bonus science on that world, as well as more battle tactics. Yeah, no, that's actually really rad. and more transvine here. There's a lot of transvine around this part of the galaxy, which is interesting. If we could find like one more thing to explore, we would probably be able to push this guy over the level threshold. Okay, so let's talk about Scorpius. I'm gonna click in here. Oops, sorry, I forgot to. So, because we are Lumeris, we have the ability to just pay some money to have somebody go out there with a colonization ship. We don't have to have our empire actually build the ship. I was waiting a little bit until we had a bunch of money on hand. Now we do. So we can just press this button to colonize this planet. It is a planet with multiple moons, enough room for more population, effectively.
Okay.
And also some transvine that we can gather. And the resource outputs are fine. And it's a good type for us. It's a habitable, a nice habitable world. Let's just go ahead and do that. We're trying to get to 4 planets. This is going to help. Right?
The presentation's really good.
So, when we go to settle a world, this is a tiny little planet. It barely has any room for people on it. When we go to settle a world, that first ship puts down like the colony starter. It doesn't develop into a full proper colony until it has produced enough food. So the colony starter will produce food from the planet itself, but also we will ship food from the nearest friendly world. And we have a couple of ways that we can affect things here. If we had a bunch of extra military manpower, that's what this resource is.
Okay.
And there were enemy outposts in this system, we could steal food from their outpost with an expenditure of manpower. Useful if you're like racing to get control of a system with somebody else. If we had more dust, we could just boost the food output of the planet itself by rushing development a little bit. And with some influence, we can basically run a propaganda campaign getting settlers to be more eager to come here, which increases the amount of food that travels from the nearby planet to this one. As things are at these rates, the base rate of food here, it's going to take 24 turns for this to turn into a real colony. And every ship full of food that arrives from Esh will reduce that amount of time. And that's a process that happens automatically. We don't have to micromanage that. Also, Esh finished building its drone networks. Hooray. So let's get... we are 1 turn away from that Xeno-industrial infrastructure, which is definitely the next thing I want to build. We could put a turn of building into cerebral reality here, or the infinite supermarket, which of course gives a bonus approval. Let's do a little bit of this. We'll start up our basic science building. The other thing we could do, of course, is put some production toward colonizing Esh 4, which I guess actually might be a better move because we want access to those strategic resource deposits, don't we? All right. Build yourselves the tools necessary to make that happen. And you can see, if you look closely, you can see like the civilization on the planet, like all the little cities and stuff.
Okay.
See the lights?
Yeah.
And we can, in fact, zoom in even closer here and get this view that exists solely for aesthetic purposes. But, it's just nice. It's just nice to look at. Okay. So, things continue. You had something else you wanted to say.
Well, so I was going to say that, in a way, you mentioned this being perhaps more incremental, but it doesn't feel as fussy as the terrestrial games where you have to moving through the hexes, setting all your different units through the hexes, like the point-to-point map, even though you're taking movement points to get from this part of the space lane to that part of to that planet and whatnot. Just I don't know, just the way it's zoomed out, and just you're given the relevant information kind of immediate. Like that feels like a major difference to me.
Okay.
Just,
Yeah, I can see where you're coming from. We have just finished that technology. I'm gonna grab xenobiology here real quick because it offers a science building that also is good on fertile planets. So this just like offers us a lot of initial science and industry. These two, picking these two up real quick. Oh, right, and because we unlocked a new tier of one of the quadrants, we've unlocked a new deed, like the legendary deeds in Endless Legend. These are competitive. Whoever is the first to possess 20 star system improvements will receive all this Eden incense. Hooray! And there's quite a lot of them in this game. There's competitive deeds in each quadrant. But we don't even get to see what they are until we unlock the quadrant. Okay, also, we have passed a relationship threshold with the Galvran. So you can see here, passing 25 makes you cordial, which causes them to start contributing resources to your empire. Once we pass 50 points, we're going to be allowed to take a quest from them, and if we complete the quest, we will assimilate them. Just like the pacification quests, right?
Yeah.
In addition, in this game, you don't, I believe, have to have done the quest. If you just get relations up to 100 points, there's a cost you can pay to just assimilate them at that point. But obviously, quests have rewards, so it's a nice way to do the thing. All right, let's see if we can find something to push our hero up to the next level. Indeed, we have found another system. We'll be there in just a moment. Aha! One of our probes has uncovered some kind of activity out here. Looks like another neutral. But that's interesting. We know where there is more stuff. And if we focus in on Esh here, you can see minus 34. We only have 20 food output in this system, even though we have population on such a powerful planet, because minus 34.5 from outposts. That is food that we are sending to the outposts. You can see.
Okay.
Next turn it will send a ship. Also, populations from Oshi are immigrating to this system. Ships containing one population at a time will arrive regularly, and you'll actually be able to see when those ships are traveling. You'll be able to see them in the space lanes, so you can sort of gauge how quickly they'll arrive and stuff. Yeah, for the moment, we just continue on. Okay, we're going to talk about the Academy later. Somewhere out there, there is a thing called the Academy. A distant concern. Alright, let's explore Heka. Heka has 5 worlds, not a lot of unexplored anomalies here, but there's some kind of atmospheric curiosity on Heka 3. And what did we find? It turns out metallic waters, minus food, plus industry. Yeah, okay. Makes sense. Also, we discovered a bunch of dust, which is cool. And we got that level I was looking for. So, plus 30 flat science on systems seems like a pretty big deal. Right, our whole Empire science output right now is 16. So let's just pull Anton back. Oh, he's still locked. Because you can only reassign heroes every so often. Next turn we pull him back. Okay, probe's continuing to discover stuff. I am definitely going to fire a probe right down the center of that system. We are not going to move here because I believe you can't unassign heroes while you're like in a space lane. You have to be at a system. So I want him to be available to reassign next turn. So we're just going to dump a bunch of probes into space here.
Okay.
Let's learn some things, shall we? That ought to get us some intelligence.
So this reminds me, and maybe it's just my brain making associations, but it reminds me of that game I saw you play a few times, Slipways. Just the point to point and the setting out the probes and whatnot.
Yeah, Slipways is a kind of a 3X, and it's a space 3X. It's very much based on some of these ideas. It is a thing we will get to in this series, because there's going to be a part where we look at a bunch of things that are similar to 4Xs or inspired by or inspirations for, So, cooperative quest started. Words in private. Your sole hero, graduate of the Academy and Dust Adept, has requested an audience. Something has awakened, they confide. The Academy has registered emissions they don't recognize. The source is certainly an endless manufactured transponder. They do not wish to explain further, claiming that Academy oaths bind them from saying more on the subject of how the signal was identified. They show their loyalty, however, in helping you discover the most efficient way to uncover the truth. Whatever the artifact is, it must be powerful and certainly had military applications. Further investigation of military technologies should provide a clue. Endless technology is safest when it's in your hands, not someone else's. So, when we as a group have researched 19 military technologies, or, when there are 19 military technologies owned, because obviously it can be the same one multiple times across multiple players. This quest will end. Whoever had the most will get some Eden incense, and the fancy whatever's going on here will be revealed to everyone. We'll worry about it later. We have taken over sovereignty of the Galvran. We have passed the 50 influence mark. We have passed the 50 influence mark, and we have the highest influence of any player on them, I should say. Because if there was another player that we were, potentially dueling with influence-wise, sovereignty would go to whoever was highest. We had a point of Lumeris population born on Esh, which is rad. We finished colonizing Esh 4. So we now have some kind of presence on 3 planets because we're working on Scorpius. And if we zoom in here, because we are at above 50, you can see they're contributing even more resources to our empire. And we have the ability to assimilate the minor civilization by providing assistance with a problem. Again, producing some pacifist political impact. Alright, what do they want? Maybe it shouldn't be a surprise. The family dynasty that currently controls the Galvran Empire are New Money, hailing from a trio of photogenic celebrity siblings who accumulated much power a generation ago. Now their spoiled offspring wield the reins of power like they're running a glitzy game show rather than a serious civilization. It does, however, reveal a chink in their diplomatic armor. An unhappy Galvran attaché, suffering the family's vanities in the intrasolar office, assures you that if you rock up to their system in a suitably militarily pimped-out vessel, you will gain their immediate respect and probably their loyalty too. The attaché hopes that the assimilation of the Galvran into your empire will eventually lead to a change of leadership. Yes, he really is that desperate. And what harm can it do? Sounds like a win-win situation. Get a lean, mean killing machine, and bring down some jumped-up Galvran dynasty in the process. So, if we showed up to the system in a ship with at least 55 offensive power, that would be enough to flip the ruling family to supporting us. You know what? Our basic scout has 51. That's probably doable. So different modules have different things that can be put in them. You can see some of them only host support modules. This one on the front of the ship could be support or gun. So if we just take out the probe module from one of our scouts and add a great big turret, that would do it. Let me make this a separate design. Actually, fancy Caravel. This is the slick one.
Okay.
Okay. And you know what? We're going to use different weapon systems. So, there's a lot of text on these. Don't bother looking at it all right now. But the important thing to focus on is different weapons are most effective at different ranges. You can see the bullet weapons that our current scouts are equipped with are really short-range tools. So let's equip this fancy gun scout with missile weaponry instead, which is effective at a different range. These guys are long-range fighters in case we get into a fight with something that we want to fight at long range, you know?
Yeah.
And we'll put like a basic engine in there, and yeah, that's something. Create that design. How hard would it be to build one of those real quick? 3 turns. We can manage that for flipping a civilization over to our control. I think that's perfectly reasonable. Okay, we should be able to reassign our hero now. Yelchin, welcome to the team. Yep, that big bonus to science there.
Wow.
It's very helpful. Xeno-industrial infrastructure obviously is very important, but I do think we're going to get the caravel first. Well, you know, if I did make it an alteration to the original caravel design, then we could just bring this other one back and edit it. Let's do that real quick. I'm going to make this one caravel kind of weird. So we'll sail home, we'll retrofit and sail back. And let's just cut this out of the production queue and work on our big infrastructure building right away. So right now, 50 industry from the whole system, our 4 points of population spread across 2 planets. When we build this, we'll get plus 10 per planet twice, plus 10 per temperate twice, and then plus 10 per fertile once. So we'll double the industry output of the system. Do we want population on Esh-4 right now? No, we really don't. It's almost strictly worse than Genis. Why don't you just come back over here, buddy? Also, that planet's not fertile, so we're producing less dust while you were over there. You'll see each planet has sort of like an overpopulation zone. This is where you could still keep putting more population points on this planet, but it starts to become a little tight resource-wise. You can see that creates some displeasure. People prefer a little bit more living space, so that's a thing we got to manage. It's not always best to just cram all of your population onto the single best planet in the system. Yeah, and we're working on tech to let us settle more planet types. We'll get there eventually. And I guess this scout ship can now just continue.
Be content.
Uh-oh.
Fortune smiles, for Horatio is willing to speak with you.
Great. So we've encountered a Horatio scout ship on this space lane, headed the other direction. So Horatio's out there somewhere. I have to say, not super jazzed about that. But you know, we'll deal. I have some plans. There's some things we can do about it. So I think this is probably a good spot to call it for this episode. Yeah.
Okay.
How are you feeling about this as a, you know, even this sort of like surface level dive as compared to like the terrestrial 4Xs?
I mean, I see a lot of points of overlap, right? A lot of things that are just expressed in a different way, but it being zoomed out the way it is, where it doesn't feel as granular and picky while still having a lot of legitimate complexity, is a lot more compelling for me.
Yeah,
that's where I'm at right now.
I think these ones are cool too. I wish there were more of them. And the thing is, there are actually there's a fair number of Space 4Xs out there right now. Things that are modern, still getting expansions and stuff. And it's just a little bit of a blind spot for me. And we're going to be resolving that to some degree over the course of the series. But that's going to be it for us for today. Thank you all so much for watching. When you come back next time, we're going to start figuring out what we're going to do about old Conehead over there. And we'll see you then.